Welcome to Faith by Fire, a podcast where trials become testimonies and challenges ignite unshakable faith. Here we explore stories of perseverance, hope, and the refining fire that shapes us into who we are meant to be. Whether you're walking through the flames or celebrating victory on the other side, this is your space to be inspired, encouraged, and reminded that faith is strongest when tested. This is Faith by Fire. I just want to start by welcoming everyone back this week. I'm Haley. Grace could not be with us today, but that is okay. We are going to go over today's episode a little bit. We're just going to jump right into it. I'm going to be continuing the talk about myself and my siblings and how we grew up in a home where drugs and alcohol were predominant and how our parents introduced these things to us so young, and the poverty and how it wasn't just a backdrop, but a trap for us to become another statistic. We're also going to touch base on bullying and what that looked like for us and how school became a second battlefield. And these stories are sad and they're hard, but they're full of strength. And I think that's why I wanted to start off today with a verse that I feel is really powerful. It speaks about perseverance, character, hope, and the midst of your suffering. So today we will be reading from Romans. It is Romans chapter 5, verse 3 through 5. And Romans is actually in the New Testament, and I'm going to be reading from the English Standard Version. So again, Romans chapter 5, verses 3 through 5. And it states, "Not only that, but we rejoice in our suffering, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us." Let's talk about this verse a little bit. Let's get into it a little bit deeper and talk about what it means and maybe some takeaways I can give you guys. And we're going to start with the rejoicing and suffering. This, to me, is stating us as believers. It's encouraging us as believers to see trials not as meaningless pain, but as opportunities for growth. Be grateful for your hardships. And I know that may sound crazy, but God knows what we need. And these hardships, they create growth, even when we don't see it in the middle of all of the chaos. And sometimes we just have to trust that God has us and learn that we're growing. And growth actually comes from a chain of transformation. And that's what the rest of this verse speaks to. It's saying suffering to endurance, endurance to character, character to hope. So that's your chain of transformation. And it's saying suffering produces endurance. You're experiencing those hardships no matter how small or big. It's building patience within you, a steadfastness within you. And once that suffering builds to that endurance is going to produce a character within you. Through endurance, those impurities are being ripped away. They're creating a stronger, more trustworthy person. They're building that character. And from that character that is built, that stronger character that is built within you, you're producing hope. That character produces hope. That character leads to a deeper and more certain hope for the future. And I'm not talking about a hope that we lean on for a silly wish. I'm talking about the hope that doesn't disappoint, because it's a hope given to us from God through the Holy Spirit. It's a hope that gives us strength. It gives us something to look forward to. We will not be disappointed. You will not be disappointed because of this hope. And I just wanted to read this verse today because it serves as a reminder that difficulties, no matter how big or small, they shape us into who we are. They make us stronger, more faithful people. And it's not about glorifying the suffering. that you have endured, but it's about recognizing how God can use it to deepen resilience within you, how God can build and refine our character and anchor us in hope that does not fail. So as we transition today and we continue on with our story, even though it may be sad, even though some parts may be hard for me to talk about, the path, the path that we walked, the path that I walked, the path that my sister walked, it has grown us in so many ways. It created humans that wanted to be better, humans that wanted to do better. And I'm going to leave that there, and hopefully you guys can take away from that and understand that there is something for you. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. It will make you a better version of yourself. So we're going to start today. We're going to pick up where we left off. And I think Grace had mentioned that she remembered sitting in a room with our father. And she was sitting in a room and she was sitting on his lap. And she said she had felt as if she knew someone was coming, or he knew that someone was coming. And that's because he did. And unfortunately, he was using Grace as a human shield, essentially, to lighten the impact of what was to come. And that was his arrest. Child Protective Services and a SWAT team actually broke down the doors of the home that we were living in at that time. And they came in, and CPS had taken Grace, and they had arrested my father and taken him. And I do want to back it up, though. I want to take it back a little bit, and I want to give some details to this leading up to it. And I want to start by pointing out that our parents had started getting heavily addicted to prescription pain medication. And the timeline that I'm like speaking on was the late 90s, early 2000s. So during this time, there was a huge wave of addiction due to opioids, due to these prescription pain medications. And our parents were affected by this. And unfortunately, these drugs were legal. Doctors would prescribe this stuff like it was candy. And especially to a man that was involved in a life-altering accident. So that's where those were introduced. And my mother also had health issues, and she was also prescribed pain medication. But as they got addicted and as time went on, they learned how to milk the system. And what I mean by that is they would go to multiple doctors, and they would even go to doctors out of state. I remember them traveling. They would have a doctor in, this state, and then they would travel to that state and have a doctor there. And I don't really know how they got away with it, but they did. And so they would go to these multiple doctors. They would get multiple prescriptions. But the crazy thing is they would go through these within days. And they got like a wide variety of things, which is crazy to think about. But they got a wide variety of pain medications, but their drug of choice was OxyContin. And they would, obviously they wouldn't take these the way they were supposed to, the way that they were prescribed to them, because they would go through them so quickly because they were so addicted to them. But they would snort these drugs. They would, crush these up and ended up like breaking the drug down and shooting it up themselves using a syringe. And sometimes they would sell the drugs to make quick cash, but the majority of the time they would sell whatever we had to get their fix. And they would even go as far as to sell, personal items. Our parents received food stamps because we were in that category. And we received food stamps, but they would take those food stamps and they would sell them. And there would be times that we wouldn't have food to eat because they cared more about getting their fix than they did about feeding us kids. And, I also remember my dad stealing a lot. He would go and he would break into things and places and people's homes, and he would steal things to sell to, go make money to buy to buy his drugs. And I even remember our parents packing us around. They would put us in the car and they would take us to these drug houses. And there would be times where because these weren't great people, obviously, like they hung around with n- not great people. Sometimes they would take us into the house, and sometimes we would just sit in the car. They would leave us small children in the car for hours at a time while they were in there doing whatever they were doing. And I think eventually there was a target on their back because of this stuff, and they were being watched by law enforcement. And I think that's what led to my dad being arrested. But I think what pushed it over the edge that ultimately led to, CPS coming in and to him being arrested was I had befriended a little girl that lived close to us at that time. She lived right down the alley, and she would come over to play, and we would ride our bikes. And I remember one day I went to go in the back door, and through the back door was the kitchen. And I went to go in through the back door, and she had followed me inside the house. And there was my dad and his brother and my mom, and they were all in the kitchen. And their dad was sitting in a chair. He had a makeshift tourniquet on his arm, and he was shooting up. He had a needle just hanging out of his arm, and he was hunched over, passed out. And then mom was over helping dad's brother get his fix, and you have all the residual evidence just on the counter. And mind you, this was just another day for me. I just kept walking to wherever I was going. Walking, I think, through the kitchen to the living room, and that was my normal. But I turned around and I remember seeing my friend and seeing her face, and she looked pretty scared, and she left pretty quickly. And I honestly don't remember talking to her much after that. And shortly after is when dad got arrested. So I'm going to assume that she went home and she told someone what had happened or what she had seen. And this is probably what really pushed it to that point. But my parents somehow did catch wind. They knew that something was going to happen. They knew that something was going to go down. And Josh and I actually ended up being at school when this happened. And so Grace was the only one at home at the time with him. And I'm not quite sure where our mother was, but dad used her as a human shield, essentially. And, the doors got busted down, and CPS took Grace, and the SWAT team took dad. And I just want to say how sorry I am to Grace that she even remembers that, and how much that must, if she sits down and really thinks about it, that has to affect her. To know that your parent, instead of making sure that you were in a safe space, they only cared about themselves and what would happen to them. And that breaks my heart for her. But dad, of course, went to jail. And I remember, like I said, Josh and I were at school. My mama had came, and she is the one that picked Grace up, or had gotten Grace from wherever they had taken her. And and mama came and picked Josh and I up from school, and we went and stayed with her for a few days. And ultimately, dad was in jail, but it couldn't have been too long. It was a very short period of time. But during that time, mom moved us closer to our dad's parents, so our mama and our papa. And once we move to where they were, I know in their minds they were probably trying to protect us. And in a lot of ways they did. A lot of ways they they were there, but there was also a lot of times that they weren't able to be there. And even though we were living close to them, and This is when things started to get a little bit more intense because of everything that had happened. I think there was a lot of heat on our parents at this point. So social workers will come and talk to us kids, and of course we're being coerced and scripted to, say certain things, don't say certain things, pretty much make it seem like everything is fine at home even though it wasn't. And we would have to go and talk to school counselors. And I remember during this time, our brother, he had a lot of anger issues and behavioral problems, and he was only 7 or 8 at the time. But our parents' way of trying to fix this, trying to make all this stuff go away, try to make it seem like everything was under control and that our brother was fine, that us kids were fine, was to introduce the drugs and the alcohol. And that's exactly what our dad did. I remember the first time our dad gave our brother any kind of substance, it was, and he may have given him stuff before, but this is the first time I remember. And he was about 7 or 8. And I remember being in the living room and him showing Josh how to roll and smoke a joint. And I remember him looking at me and telling me that he needs this. This is going to help him. This is how he needs to cope. And that, at the time, I don't really know what I was thinking. Maybe, like, I think I knew that it wasn't right because I was offered things too, but I would never do it. I always tried to make myself seem like I always tried to make myself invisible, make sure I wasn't seen. I would try to, be gone as much as possible. But like, I just thinking about that, I can't imagine what was going through Josh's mind. Like, imagine I'm 9, 10 years old and I'm watching my dad get high with my little brother. And I really don't have any way to put into words what exactly I was feeling or thinking. So I can only imagine what he was going through. Just the chaos, being confused, being scared, all the emotions. And then to top it off, we're already living this like life of drug and alcohol use that our parents has introduced, but we're also living in like poverty. And our parents were heavy smokers. So we would go to school smelling like smoke. Sometimes we would wear the same clothes for a few days in a row. And sometimes the only meal that we would have would be at school. And then so you have all of this stuff going on at home, and then you're going to school and you're getting laughed at and you're getting made fun of. And the reality is we didn't have we had no stability at home. We didn't live in a safe environment. It was very unsafe. We had limited access to any kind of support. So we had all of this stuff going on and we had no one to turn to. And the way my parents thought to fix it was to introduce drugs and alcohol to children to help them cope. That's so sad to think about. That's disgusting to me. And no wonder he had so much trouble. And I think for me, I learned how to block things out. So, yes, I would get made fun of or bullied or people would say things to me, but I learned how to block those things out for the most part. I don't think I don't think he knew how to process that. I don't think he knew how to make sense of what was happening, and so he acted out. And I know it was like that for Grace too, but I think she was like me in a lot of ways with learning to just stay quiet, learning to just be background noise and, not be heard, and maybe they'll just forget that you're there. And this honestly is the daily life for so many kids. This is this is the reality for more people than you realize. There's over 7 million children that live in a home where at least one parent struggles with substance abuse. And in most cases, it results in food insecurities, housing instability, and neglect. And when these kids go to school, they carry a heavy burden. They're carrying invisible scars. They may act out. They may be withdrawing, struggling to focus. And when the bullying begins at school, because kids can be cruel to what they don't understand, when that bullying begins, please step in. Teach your kids, teach your children to be kind. You never know what someone else is dealing with behind closed doors. And if you're listening to this and it hits close to home, whether it's your story or someone you know, please know you're not alone. There are people who care and there are resources out there. Reach out to your local school counselors, reach out to social workers. There's hotlines that you can call. And if you're a teacher or a coach or a neighbor, don't look the other way. Your support could be life-changing for these children. You could be the person to change their life. You could be you could be their guardian angel and not even know it. And that's actually was the case for me. During this time when all of this stuff was going on, I don't think I ever told these people this, but during this time and when this stuff was going on, I was roughly 4th grade. And I ended up becoming really good friends with this little girl. And we remained friends until about middle school, and then we drifted apart. But her and her mother were my saving grace. They taught me what love looked like. They taught me what a family should be, how a parent should actually care for their children. They took me in and made me feel like I was a part of something. And I just remember being with them a lot, and they made me want to be better. They made me realize what I was living was not normal. They made me want to strive to do better, be better. And even though I was stuck for many years, I do look back and I do want to thank them because they were my inspiration to become something. And I never got to tell them thank you. And if they're listening, I think they know who they are. And thank you so much. You were my guardian angel. And I will forever be grateful for you. So, with that, I think we're going to close today. And I would like to invite everyone to be a part of our church. Our church is the Peace Ministry Outreach. If you're local, we would love to have you. We would love to see you in person. If you just want to reach out, we will give you the address so you can be a part of our Sunday service. And if you aren't local, that's okay too, because they do have a Facebook and they do put the service live on there every Sunday. And it's posted there. So you can go and you can follow and like their Facebook page. And again, that's Peace Ministry Outreach. They also do a Thursday evening service that is at a different location. On Thursdays, they actually provide dinner. So you don't have to worry about cooking dinner. You can come, you can congregate, eat dinner, and get a good word. And if you would be interested in the Thursday service, just you can go ahead and reach out to either us or again to them through their Facebook. There is also a women's group that they have, and it's called Deborah's Table. This is on Wednesday mornings at 9:30. And it's just where like-minded women come together and support each other and love each other. And we give a little bit of inspiration to each other. And that's actually where my journey started. And it was life altering for me. And I really, really owe it to the women's group. So come be a part of it, make new friends, meet new people, be a part of something great. I would also like to encourage you to like and follow the Faith by Fire Facebook and Instagram. Make sure you go and like and follow, and we'll do a little bit better. We'll try to go into doing a little bit better on updating our Facebook and our Instagram. But we also have an email, so if you'd like to reach us, through our email and you have any questions regarding the podcast or any stories you would like us to go more in depth on, or if you would like to eventually be on the podcast yourself, because we do plan on doing that, reach out to our email. It is ignitefaithbyfire@gmail.com. And I just want to say thanks again for listening. And this is Faith by Fire.